The real-world collision between law, identity, and corporate ethics lies at the heart of the judgment by the Supreme Court over how to define a woman. At the centre of this movement now is Lloyd's Bank, Britain's largest retail bank, an institution that serves 1 in 2 British adults, and actually one of the few banks to remain in the high street. At the centre of its recent decision lies the choice to back its transgender and non binary employees in the wake of the Supreme Court ruling that has redrawn the legal boundaries of gender recognition in the UK. Many years ago, in about 1984 or 85 or something, I was incredibly privileged to have the opportunity to illustrate the front cover for a reprint of a book by Bridget Brophy called In Transit. And in that book, the main character is faced with a choice: which loo does she do they use? And so that debate was going on way back, and as I say, that was a reprint. And the debate is back again. Which loo, which changing room, which facilities does a transgender woman now use? What does it mean in practice? It creates uh, it creates the legal basis for excluding transgender women from female-only spaces, from changing rooms, wards, refuges, if such exclusion is proportionate. It's being hailed by some as a victory for biological women's rights. Others see it as a devastating rollback of transgender inclusion and dignity. This week, this is all because the UK Supreme Court ruled unanimously that the term woman and sex in the 2010 Equality Act referred specifically to biological sex. The case was brought by For Women Scotland, a gender-critical campaign group, and it challenged the Scottish Government's interpretation of sex-based protections. In short, the ruling now clarifies that such protections apply to biological women only, not those holding a gender recognition certificate under the 2004 Act. In response, Lloyd's Bank issued an internal statement, subtle but significant, and Andrew Walton, their chief corporate affairs director, posted on the bank's Rainbow intranet network, addressing trans and non-binary colleagues directly: "We cherish you, we celebrate you, and we remain committed to inclusivity." Sharon Doherty, Lloyd's chief people and places officer, followed with: "Standing in solidarity at this tough time. It's not merely symbolic. Lloyd's previously offered free counselling to 30,000 employees after Conservative Party conference rhetoric targeted trans identities. Its culture is not neutral, it's actively supportive." But is this political? Of course. Can a bank be apolitical while employing people of all identities? Absolutely not. Former Lloyd's employees have accused the bank of taking sides in a contentious debate. What about the women who are fighting for their rights? One asked. But the truth is, rights discourse is not a zero-sum game. The fear that inclusion of one group necessarily entails the exclusion of another is a fallacy, and one corporations are increasingly refusing to accept. There's a risk of making moral declarations, but there's also a risk in silence. And Lloyd's has calculated correctly, I believe, that affirming human dignity, especially of its employees, is worth the political heat. Beyond Lloyd's, the cultural reaction has been loud and impassioned. Nicola Cullen of Bridgeton fame launched a fundraiser for the trans charity Not a Phase, raising over £60,000 in just a day. Trans advocates like Sarah Savage and Jane Fay have expressed deep fear. Not abstract legal concern, but the dread of being forced into male wards, of losing access to domestic violence shelters, of simply using public loos safely. Meanwhile, government ministers like Karen Smith have floundered when asked a simple question: which changing room should a trans woman use now? The answer is now painfully unclear. Some commentators deride these responses as emotionalism or the tyranny of feelings, but law, let's remember, doesn't operate in a vacuum. It's lived, and people do feel unsafe when laws change the conditions under which they live, move, and exist. Safety is not infantile, it's foundational. And when a trans teenager named Kate takes her life, when vigils are attended by entire communities, when slogans like Protect the Dolls become more like fashion statements, they become a moral imperative. Lloyd's Bank has chosen to side with empathy, and in doing so, it aligns itself with the idea that corporate power should be used not merely to maximize shareholder value, but to preserve human dignity in difficult times. We may not all agree with Lloyd's stance, but we must all contend that the courage it takes for an institution to plant a flag in contested terrain and say, "You are welcome here," is impressive.